To some eyes, Western society is highly sexualized. How do you see it, and how does it affect women's mental and physical health?
Well, it's another big question, isn't it? So I assume by what you mean by Western highly sexualized is that it's displayed externally, like it's in the media and advertising and the way human beings dress and play and meet and act in all parts of life, really, where there might be a very sexual aspect to other cultures. It may be not displayed so overtly, so that part. So yes, of course, that has significant implications for women and women's mental health, but I also want to point to it has also implications and affects men's mental health as well. So I'm not overlooking at all the detrimental consequences that overt sexuality plays in women losing touch with who they are, needing to live up to some kind of image or ideal. It also, though, really does affect men. So we can't overlook that. It's not just an issue of women. Maybe there has been a deeper consequence for women. There also has been a consequence for men. So, I don't want us to overlook that. So if we're willing to see this, again, it's the willingness to look more deeply at what's going on. So this need to display, and what drives that? The need to display, to have sexual partnership and union, to feel safe, to be connected, to be desired, to be loved. Again, this idea of being loved, being needed, being wanted. So there's a lot that drives it. There's also control and perceived weakness. So there's a lot under the covers. Really, there's a lot under the covers. So personally, in community and as a society, we need to look under the covers. We need to see what is driving it, and not just look outward, but look in here. Where are we trying to be someone and attract? Where are we overlooking our innate loveliness, our innate goodness, our innate beauty, male or female? Where are we overlooking this that naturally is full, naturally is whole, naturally is complete, naturally is attractive? So for when men and women come from this place of this naturalness, there isn't this aggression and misused sexuality and projection, because it's being projected everywhere, both ways. It's, and that's why I said it's not just women's mental health. So if we look at men and women, if we have to be someone, show up as someone that we're not, we're holding ourselves in a way that's not true. Now, this is equally true for men and women. if we have to dress and act and be in control or in submissiveness in order to get love or approval or whatever that is, we're not being true to what's living this life. So it takes a ruthless inquiry to see what's running. In our culture, it's very difficult for more sexually driven human beings to actually look at that and see what that is that's driving the behaviour, because it feels natural, it feels normal. Our society, as you pointed to, is a highly sexualised society. We see it filtering even earlier and earlier towards our children. So rather than the innocence of the body, the nakedness of the body, the innocence of the body, the innocence of sexuality, the deep meeting of sexuality, this that's highly sexualized, everything's on display and everything becomes an act driven from that place. And the reason it has such implications on the mental health of men and women is because this acting is having to be upheld and it's not real. And people feel deficient underneath the fake gloss, underneath the act of trying to be sexual, trying to be loved, trying to be seen and show up in a particular way. You know, a man who has enough conquests, a woman who's, you know, loved enough. So this ruthlessness is to really look at these deeper drives, that why our society is so sexualized and why we're willing to play along with it.
Like the six pack for the guy and the big boobs for the woman, kind of, they would be.
Yeah. Well, all of it.
Emblematic, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so the physical body, the dressing of the body, all of it. So then men and women get to feel deficient and cover it with a gloss. Now the gloss, no matter how beautiful, no matter how sexual, no matter how much activity is going on, it's not fulfilling. And so it can cause upset, fear, anger can be underneath, and we see a lot of acts of violence come from this anger, and the anger really is born from this weakness, this perceived vulnerability. So the issue is so complex. You know, because it causes everyone to actively be present to themselves and what's driving their own behaviour. See, it's always easier to look out and point and go, well, if the media stop doing this, or if men stop doing that, or if women stop doing this, or, you know, you get the picture. Really, it's self-responsibility. We have to look at what is that, whether we're a man or a woman, what is that causes me to act out of need? What is that causes me to act against my natural instincts? And it's painful because we don't want to admit we're afraid. We don't want to admit that we feel deficient. We don't want to admit that we feel flawed or less than another. That's only the first part though, that recognising what's deeper, what's driving the behaviour, because it might look and feel good. a lot of sex does. Sexuality, dressing and dancing and playing and drinking and the intimacy itself. As I said though, it can leave us unfulfilled. So then there has to be more gloss, more hype, more dressing up, more going out, more drinking, more drugs, more of the act of sexuality. So it really takes a ruthless inquiry to look at what's driving that. I will be nothing, or I won't be in control, or I could be killed or overlooked or left behind, or I won't be seen as one of the guys, or I won't be, you know, seen as desirable as a woman, or there's a lot that's under the surface. But as with anything, we need to start here. Where are we overlooking who we are? Where are we overlooking this love that is so full that we don't need something to fulfill it? We don't need to dress in a certain way to fulfill it. We don't need to drink or take drugs in order to discover it. You know, there are a lot of people that take spiritual drugs to discover awareness and consciousness. This consciousness, this grace is here, always. So it's a ruthless inquiry. It's a huge question. And so this little snippet, it can only be a pointer to, are we willing to take a moment and stop and discover what's here? Because it's easy to blame, and as I said in the beginning, yes, there are such terrible, horrific things that are happening both to men and women, predominantly to women. Yes, it all affects the mental health of both men and women. As an individual, the only place that we can go for inquiry is here, to see what's driving this behaviour, what has me live my life in this way rather than being lived by this love. It can be painful, you know, very painful to uncover these patterns, which is why it's easier to blame, it's easier to project. Having said that, once we actually inquire, once we're willing to meet the pain, the blaming, the shame, the hurt, the self-loathing, the lack of self-worth, the loss of integrity, whatever it is, the unlovability, whatever it is, when we're willing to meet the pain of it and really open, we discover something. And if we're willing to keep opening to the discovery, we discover a depth of love that is ever deepening, endless being. And we're no longer willing to participate in that playing out of, you said something like this, the sexualised society. We're no longer willing to play out our life in that way. Life feels very simple, beautiful, and full, deeply loved. So I'm not sure how that's addressed that question, because it's such a huge, it is a huge question. Is there anything that you have in response to that? How that is to...
With something like that, I just have to sit with it for a while to get anything significant, you know. It is a big question, but perhaps another time I can come back with something.
And that's useful for others to hear that yes, we might need to really sit with this, to sit, to be still, to open, to be moved, to explore, to inquire and to discover. And to have support. I didn't mention that. To have support, definitely, if that's required. Definitely have support, however support is needed. Yeah.